You ever feel like the financial news is speaking a different language sometimes?
Absolutely. It can be dense.
Well, today we're going to try and crack the code on a couple of recent headlines that might have caught your attention.
Okay.
We want to dig into this, well, interesting dynamic between Trump and Powell,
Mm-hmm.
and also try to figure out why the U.S. dollar seems to be, flexing its muscles so much lately.
Two big topics, definitely.
Yeah, and you shared some really sharp analysis on these, and our mission really is just to pull out the key insights, make sense of why they matter for you.
Sounds good. So, looking at recent statements, market moves, that kind of thing.
Exactly. So, all right, let's jump right in with Trump versus Powell.
Okay. What's really striking right off the bat is how much influence someone can apparently have without actually, doing anything concrete policy-wise.
Yeah, the analysis you sent on that, it really zeroes in on this idea. It's about the strategic use of uncertainty.
That's it.
The piece, I think it was called The Art of the Threat.
Yeah, that was the one.
It pointed out how Trump's statement, I'm not looking to fire Jerome Powell. You'd think that's reassuring, right?
You would think so, yes.
But Wall Street apparently saw it as something else entirely, something quite deliberate, almost calculated.
Exactly. The writer's point seems to be that this isn't about changing policy directly. It's more psychological.
Shaping perceptions.
Precisely. That one statement, even though it sounds kind of neutral, it just keeps the possibility of Powell being removed alive in the back of everyone's mind. It plants a seed.
And the market reaction reflected that nervousness, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The analysis went into detail there.
Yeah, it said markets sort of flinched, bond yields twitched a bit.
And the VIX jumped.
Right, the market's fear gauge, basically, it just highlighted the unease those words created. Yeah. It really felt like the whole financial world just held its breath for a second.
It did. And that really gets to the core of this threat idea the analysis talked about.
That he doesn't need to actually fire him.
Exactly. The reminder that he could, that's presented as the real tool here, the threat itself, and that quick market reaction, it just shows how incredibly sensitive things are to any hint of interference with the Fed's independence.
Even before any actual policy changes.
Right, long before.
I thought that analogy they used was pretty powerful. Powell trying to conduct a symphony while the hall is on fire.
Yeah, that really captures it, doesn't it? The kind of impossible situation he's in, trying to manage monetary policy with this constant background noise, this potential political disruption.
He brings it home.
And the piece didn't pull any punches about the risks involved either, calling political meddling with the Fed financial arson.
Wow. Yeah, that's strong language.
It really underlines how delicate that balance is and how damaging interference could potentially be.
So for you listening, what does this actually mean? Well, this sort of manufactured uncertainty, it has real effects, doesn't it?
Very real. The analysis suggests markets are now trying to factor in several different outcomes.
Like what? Powell stays? Maybe he bends to pressure?
Or he gets replaced eventually if, the political winds change significantly. All these possibilities get priced in.
Which creates instability.
Exactly. And that instability, fueled by this kind of implied threat, it contributes directly to the market volatility we sometimes see. Understanding that gives you a lens, maybe, for interpreting some of the market swings.
Okay, so the big takeaway here is really the power of the unspoken, the potential.
Yeah, it's not just about official announcements or actions. It's about what could happen and how that possibility alone can ripple through the markets.
Right. Okay, let's switch gears then. The other big thing making headlines.
Yeah.
The U.S. dollar, surprisingly strong lately.
Yes, and the second piece you shared, it really went for the dramatic language there, didn't it?
It did. Words like ascended, deity, crush its enemies.
Huh. Yes, certainly dramatic. But I suppose it gets the point across about the sheer scale of the dollar's recent rise.
Definitely grabs your attention. And it mentioned the DXY, that's the dollar index, right? Measures it against other big currencies.
Correct. Like a benchmark for the dollar's overall strength.
And that index broke through some key levels. But the real question is why? What's driving this dollar strength?
Well, according to this analysis, the main driver isn't necessarily just the U.S. economy being incredibly strong on its own.
Oh. So what is it then?
It's more about the relative weakness seen in other major economies. The piece mentioned Europe, China, India, all facing their own economic challenges right now.
Okay.
So the U.S., by comparison, well, the analysis used that colorful phrase, the least drunk guy at the macroeconomic bar.
Huh. That's memorable. So it's less about the U.S. being amazing and more about everyone else having a tougher time making the dollar look better by comparison.
That seemed to be the argument presented, yes.
And-
Relative strength.
And the impact of this strong dollar, it's not just numbers on a screen, is it? It affects other things.
Oh, absolutely. It has pretty wide-ranging effects. The piece detailed how it puts pressure on other assets.
Like gold and oil.
Exactly. Those were mentioned as slipping. And emerging markets often find it particularly challenging when the dollar surges like this.
Right.
The analysis described it almost like the dollar was declaring dominance.
And it goes beyond just asset prices too, right? It affects actual trade, businesses.
Correct. A stronger dollar makes U.S. exports more expensive for other countries, which can hurt competitiveness.
Okay.
It can also push down commodity prices, since many are priced in dollars globally. And it can tighten global liquidity, basically, make dollar borrowing more expensive or harder to come by.
Which puts pressure on other central banks.
Definitely. They have to react to what the dollar's doing
Yeah.
and how it affects their own currencies and economies. It creates headaches all around.
The piece finished with a really stark statement, didn't it? Something like, when the dollar moves this strongly, it is the market.
Yeah, and that betting against it is like picking a fight with the empire.
That really hammers home the dollar's influence, its sheer power in the global financial system. It suggests you ignore these big dollar moves at your peril.
It certainly implies that.
Yeah.
And for you, understanding this dynamic is pretty important for, grasping those larger global economic forces. They influence everything from investment portfolios down to, potentially, the price of goods.
Okay, so let's recap quickly. We've done a deep dive into two really fascinating, maybe interconnected areas today. First, how the potential for political action, that sort of shadow hanging over the Fed, can inject real uncertainty into markets.
The art of the threat.
Right. And second, the surprising strength of the U.S. dollar, which seems to be less about standalone U.S. power and more about the relative struggles elsewhere.
The least drunk guy scenario.
Exactly. The big aha moments for me were, well, realizing a non-event or the threat of an event can be such a potent market force, and seeing how one currency's strength can actually be a reflection of weakness elsewhere in the world.
Yeah, those are crucial insights from the analyses we looked at.
So this leaves us, and you listening, with maybe a final thought to chew on. Considering how sensitive markets are to just the potential for change at the Fed,
Right.
and seeing the dollar's current dominance, which is apparently fueled by global instability elsewhere, what does all this suggest about the underlying stability or maybe the fragility of the whole global financial system right now? Is that dollar empire, as the source called it, quite as invincible as it looks in this particular moment?
That's a really interesting question. How interconnected are these things? And what does it signal about underlying conditions globally?
Definitely something worth pondering. Perhaps digging a bit more into what's happening economically in those other regions we mentioned, Europe, China, India.
Yeah, could provide some valuable context.